A human lived alone for years, until three beautiful alien princesses asked to stay the night Elia's ward woke before the sun, as he always did. The planet had a gentle sunrise. Soft light spread across wide silver grasslands, and the sky shifted slowly from deep blue to pale gold. Elias stood near the window of his small habitat, holding a metal cup filled with warm water and herbs. He watched the horizon in silence. He had lived alone for 7 years. No alarms woke him anymore. No voices filled the mornings. The systems around him worked quietly because he kept them that way. Elias checked power levels, weather patterns, and orbital data every day, not because someone ordered him to, but because it felt wrong not to. Humanity had once planned to settle this world. They built satellites, relay towers, and small habitats like his. Then politics changed, priorities shifted, and the project was quietly abandoned. Ships left one by one. Messages stopped coming. Elias stayed. Some thought it was a mistake. Some thought he was forgotten. The truth was simpler. Someone had to shut things down properly. Someone had to make sure abandoned systems did not fail in ways that could harm others passing through the region. Elias had volunteered, thinking it would be temporary. Years passed. Loneliness did not arrive all at once. It came slowly, like dust settling on unused furniture. Elias learned how to live with it. He spoke less. He listened more. He found comfort in routine and silence. That morning, as he prepared to begin his daily checks, an unfamiliar signal appeared on his console. Elias frowned. The signal was weak but clear. It was not human, not automated either. A ship was entering the atmosphere. He checked the sky through external cameras. A sleek vessel descended carefully, its movement controlled and cautious. It did not carry weapons. It did not broadcast threats. Instead, it sent a simple request for communication. Elias paused. Visitors were rare. In 7 years, only unmanned probes had passed nearby. He considered ignoring it. He considered many things. Then he took a slow breath and opened the channel. "This is Elias' ward," he said calmly. "This is a human-operated habitat. State your intent." There was a short silence. Then a soft, melodic voice responded, translated smoothly for him. "We request temporary shelter, only for 1 night." The ship landed at a respectful distance from his home. Its doors opened and 3 figures stepped out. They were tall and graceful, their movements careful, almost hesitant. Their skin shimmered faintly under the light, reflecting soft shades of blue and violet. Their clothing was elegant but practical, clearly designed for travel. Each wore a simple symbol near the chest, different in shape but clearly connected. They stopped several steps away from Elias and waited. Elias walked forward until he was close enough to see their faces clearly. They were not human, but their expressions were readable, tired. Alert, curious. "I'm Elias," he said again. "You're welcome to stay the night." The 3 exchanged brief glances. The eldest stepped forward slightly. "I am Salith," she said. "These are Naira and Viorine. We thank you for your hospitality." Elias nodded and turned toward his habitat. He did not ask why they were here. He did not ask who they truly were. He simply opened the door and gestured for them to enter. Inside, the space was modest, clean, organized. There were shelves filled with tools, old data pads, books, and carefully labeled storage containers. The air was warm and smelled faintly of metal and plants. Naira's eyes widened slightly as she looked around. "You live here alone?" she asked. "Yes," Elias replied. "For how long?" Viorine asked quietly. 7 years. The silence that followed was heavy but not uncomfortable. Elias offered them warm drinks and simple food prepared from preserved supplies and local crops he had learned to grow. The princesses accepted politely. They sat together at a plain table. No guards, no barriers, just 4 beings sharing a meal. Salith observed Elias closely. "You do not seem surprised by us." "I am," Elias said honestly, "but surprise doesn't mean fear." Naira tilted her head. "Aren't you afraid we could be dangerous?" Elias thought for a moment. "Anyone can be dangerous," he said. "That alone isn't a reason to refuse kindness." That answer stayed with them. As the evening passed, conversation flowed slowly. Elias spoke of the planet, its quiet beauty, and the systems he maintained. He explained how old satellites still guided ships safely through nearby routes, even though no one remembered who kept them running. Viorine listened carefully. "Your people left this place?" "Yes." "But you remained?" "Yes." "Why?" Elias looked at his hands. "Because things break when no one watches them." Naira leaned forward. "And if they break, others get hurt," he said simply. The princesses exchanged another look, this one more thoughtful. Later, as night settled in, Elias showed them the sleeping quarters. He insisted they take the larger space while he used the auxiliary room. They protested, but he smiled and waved it away. "I'm used to less," he said. As the lights dimmed, Salith accessed her personal data device quietly. She searched old records, cross-referencing human activity in this region. What she found made her still. According to the archives, humans were never meant to stay here long-term. The withdrawal order had been absolute. No long-term caretakers were assigned. Yet here he was, one human, maintaining balance. Salith looked toward the door of the auxiliary room where Elias slept. For the first time that day, she felt uncertain, not about danger, but about something deeper. What kind of species leaves, yet leaves someone behind to care for what remains? And why did that single human seem so calm about it? The night outside was quiet. The systems hummed steadily. Elias slept peacefully, unaware that his simple act of kindness had already begun to change how 3 future rulers would see humanity forever. Elias woke when the habitat lights slowly brightened, following the natural rhythm he had programmed years ago. For a moment he forgot he had guests. Then he heard soft movement in the other room and remembered. He sat up, stretched, and began his morning routine quietly. Water heated, systems checked. Outside, the planet was calm, just as it had always been. When Elias stepped into the main room, he found the 3 visitors already awake. Salith stood near the window, watching the horizon. Naira was examining a shelf filled with old human books and tools. Viorine sat at the table, hands folded, as if deep in thought. "Good morning," Elias said. All 3 turned toward him. "Good morning, Elias," Salith replied. Her tone was respectful but different from before, more careful, more thoughtful. Elias prepared a simple breakfast, nothing fancy. Warm bread, preserved fruit, and tea made from local plants. They ate together in quiet comfort. Naira finally broke the silence. "You live a very steady life." Elias smiled faintly. "It wasn't always like this, but I learned to appreciate quiet." Viorine looked up. "Does it not hurt, being alone for so long?" Elias considered the question. "Sometimes," he said honestly, "but pain isn't always a bad thing. It reminds you that you care." That answer stayed with them. After breakfast, Elias began his daily work. He did not hide it or excuse himself. Instead, he invited them to observe. They followed him to the control area, where old screens displayed orbital paths, power levels, and communication relays. These satellites, Elias explained, were built to guide ships safely through nearby systems. Even now, many traders rely on them without knowing. Naira frowned. "Why hasn't anyone replaced them?" "Because they still work," Elias said. "And because no one wants to spend resources fixing what doesn't seem broken." Salith studied the data closely. "If you were to leave, what would happen?" Elias paused before answering. "Eventually, things would fail, slowly at first, then all at once." "And no one else is assigned to this duty?" "No," Viorine's eyes softened. "Yet you stay?" "Yes." They spent the morning watching him work. There was no rush in his movements, no frustration. Each action was careful, practiced, and patient. Elias treated every system as if it mattered, even though no one was watching. Later, Naira helped him recalibrate a sensor. She laughed softly when she made a small mistake, and Elias corrected it gently, without judgment. "You teach like you expect others to learn," she said. "I do," Elias replied. "Most people want to." As the day went on, the atmosphere changed. The habitat felt less like a shelter and more like a shared space. Conversation flowed more easily. Stories were exchanged. The princesses spoke of their world, their responsibilities, and the expectations placed upon them since birth. Elias listened without interruption. "It sounds heavy," he said when they finished. "It is," Salith admitted. "Every decision echoes across millions of lives." Elias nodded. "Responsibility usually does." Viorine watched him closely. "You carry responsibility too, just without a title." "I don't need one," Elias said. As afternoon turned to evening, the princesses received a signal from their ship. Their escorts were close. They would need to leave soon. Naira looked disappointed. "It feels like we just arrived." Salith met Elias' gaze. "You have given us shelter, honesty, and perspective, more than you realize." Elias shrugged lightly. "You asked for a night, that's all." Viorine stood and walked closer to him. "Elias, may I ask you something personal?" "Of course." "If tomorrow someone came and told you your duty was over, would you leave?" Elias was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know," he said finally. This place has become part of me. But if someone else truly cared for it, I might rest. That answer settled deeply within them. As the sound of engines echoed in the distance, the princesses prepared to depart. Elias walked them outside. The sky glowed with soft colors as evening settled in. Salith stopped before boarding her ship. Elias Ward, she said formally, history may not remember your name, but it should. Elias smiled gently. I don't need to be remembered, I just want things to keep working. Naira stepped forward and took his hand briefly, a gesture of gratitude rather than promise. You showed us a different kind of strength. Viorine looked back one last time. You reminded us that leadership does not always sit on a throne. Their ship lifted off smoothly and disappeared into the sky. Elias stood there for a while, listening to the quiet return. He went back inside and updated his daily log. Visitors departed safely, he recorded. System stable. He paused, then added, felt less alone today. Days later, far across the galaxy, 3 princesses stood before councils, elders, and future rulers. They did not speak of weapons or power. They spoke of a lone human, of patience, of responsibility without reward. Of a species that quietly holds the galaxy together, not because it must, but because it chooses to. And for the first time in a long while, plans were made, not to conquer humans, not to fear them, but to remember them. Back on the quiet world, Elias Ward woke before the sun just as always. The systems hummed, the planet breathed, and somewhere beyond the stars, humanity was no longer unseen. Elias noticed the change slowly. At first, it was small things. A communication relay that had been silent for years sent a short diagnostic ping, clean and well-timed. A trade ship passed closer to the planet than usual, its course adjusted with care, as if the pilot knew someone was watching. Elias did not assume meaning where there might be none. He simply logged the data and continued his work. But the signals kept coming. One morning, a message arrived on an old human frequency. The encryption was modern, far newer than anything still active in this sector. Elias stared at the screen for a long time before opening it. Human Station Caretaker, the message read. Your systems are acknowledged. Maintenance support will arrive within the month. Please confirm receipt. Elias exhaled slowly. He read it twice to be sure. Support. No one had used that word with him in years. He sent a brief reply. Message received. System stable. Awaiting further details. He sat back in his chair and allowed himself a moment of stillness. He did not smile, not yet. Hope, he had learned, should be handled carefully. Over the following weeks, more signs appeared. Navigation updates began syncing automatically. Supply drones passed through nearby space, dropping sealed containers at marked coordinates, clearly intended for him. Inside were fresh tools, medical supplies, seeds, and handwritten notes translated into clear human language. Thank you for keeping the lights on. Elias read that one several times. He continued his routines, but the planet no longer felt forgotten. The silence was different now. It felt shared. Then one evening another ship arrived. This one did not surprise him. The landing was smooth and familiar. When the doors opened, Salith, Naira, and Viorine stepped out together. This time they were not alone. Several aides remained at a respectful distance, allowing the 3 to approach first. Elias walked out to meet them. You came back, he said. Salith inclined her head. We told the truth about you. Naira smiled warmly, very loudly. Viorine looked around the habitat, her expression calm and steady, and people listened. Inside, they sat together once more. The space felt smaller than before, but warmer. Elias prepared tea, his movements relaxed. Salith spoke first. Our councils were unsettled. They believed humans withdrew because they lost interest in this region. What they did not understand was that humans do not leave things unfinished. Elias stirred his cup. Sometimes we do, he said, but we try not to. Naira leaned forward. Trade routes depend on your work. Entire economies. No one noticed because it never failed. Viorine added quietly. That frightened them. Elias raised an eyebrow. Why? Because it meant humans could shape stability without anyone's permission, Salith said, and without asking for credit. That thought sat heavy in the room. Salith continued. There was debate. Some wanted to formally assign authority to you, titles, oversight, control. Elias shook his head gently. I don't want that. We know, Naira said quickly. That's why we argued for something else. Viorine placed a small device on the table. A network, shared responsibility. Human engineers will rotate through this sector again, not as rulers, as caretakers, like you. Elias looked at the device but did not touch it. And me? Salith met his eyes. You are offered a choice. You may remain as you are, or you may return to human space, or you may teach. Elias was silent for a long time. He thought of quiet mornings, of the steady hum of systems, of nights where the stars felt close enough to listen. I'll stay, he said finally, for now, but I'll teach too. Naira's face brightened. Good, because many will need to learn patience. In the days that followed, the planet changed gently. New habitats were placed far apart, respecting the land. No cities rose. No noise overwhelmed the sky. People arrived not to claim, but to maintain. Elias taught them how to listen to systems, how to notice small changes before they became problems, how to work without expecting praise. You do the job, he told them, because it needs doing. That's enough. The princesses visited often, sometimes staying for tea, sometimes simply watching the sunset in silence. Their roles grew heavier elsewhere, but here they could breathe. One evening, Naira asked, "Do you feel less alone now?" Elias considered the question carefully. "I feel accompanied," he said. Far across the galaxy, stories spread, not dramatic ones, quiet ones, about humans who stayed behind to clean up after wars they didn't start. About engineers who kept old stations running for strangers they would never meet. Humanity's reputation shifted. They were no longer seen only as explorers or builders, but as something rarer. Stewards. Back on the planet, Elias updated his log as he always had. Population increased slightly, systems stable, teaching ongoing. He paused, then added, still quiet, but not empty. Outside, the stars burned steadily. And for the first time in a long while, the galaxy felt like it was finally paying attention to the ones who had never stopped caring. The planet no longer felt like the edge of everything. Elias noticed it most in the mornings. The silence was still there, but it had changed shape. It was no longer empty. It was shared. Somewhere beyond the hills, another habitat hummed softly. Far above, satellites moved in clean, steady paths, watched by more than one pair of eyes now. Elias still woke before the sun. That had not changed. He stepped outside with his cup of warm tea and looked across the silver grasslands. The sky slowly shifted colors just as it always had. Routine mattered. Continuity mattered. Behind him, quiet footsteps approached. You are already awake again, Salith said. Elias smiled slightly but did not turn. I tried sleeping in once. The systems complained. Salith stood beside him, hands folded behind her back. She wore simpler clothing now when she visited, less formal than before. Out here, titles felt heavy and unnecessary. More arrivals are scheduled today, she said. 3 human engineers, 1 logistics specialist. Elias nodded. I'll prepare the orientation. You've created a community, Salith said softly. Elias shook his head. No. I created room. Saw the new arrivals later that day. Their ship landed carefully, just like the first 1 year ago. Elias greeted them with the same calm tone he had used with the princesses. He did not overwhelm them with instructions. He showed them how to listen. How to observe before acting. How to treat machines as long-term companions, not tools to be rushed. Some adapted quickly, others struggled. One young engineer asked him, "Why don't we automate more of this?" Elias answered patiently. Because automation hides problems until they grow. People notice things machines ignore. The engineer nodded slowly. As weeks passed, the settlement grew not in size but in purpose. No one rushed. No one competed. Work was shared. Credit was not tracked. That confused many outsiders. Messages came in from distant systems, some curious, some cautious, some suspicious. How do humans benefit from this? One inquiry asked. Salith answered that one personally. They benefit by knowing things are cared for, she said. And that seems to be enough. Naira visited often, bringing news from beyond the sector. She was brighter than before, lighter. Responsibility still followed her, but it no longer crushed her spirit. You've ruined politics for me, she told Elias once, laughing softly. I doubt that, Elias said. No, really, she replied. Now every meeting feels louder than it needs to be. Viring came less often, but when she did, she stayed longer. She spent hours walking alone across the plains, observing the systems Elias had built into the land itself. One evening, she said, you taught us something dangerous. Elias looked at her calmly. Dangerous how? You showed us that power does not need permission, she said. Only responsibility. Elias considered that. Then use it carefully. Years passed. Elias aged quietly. Lines appeared at the corners of his eyes. His movements slowed slightly, but his mind remained sharp. He trained others to take over parts of his work, not all at once, gradually. The day came when he realized he had not personally recalibrated a satellite in months. That realization did not bring fear. It brought relief. One night he sat alone in his habitat, reviewing logs. Outside, the stars felt closer than ever. He recorded his entry slowly. Sector stable, systems maintained by multiple teams, low risk of failure. He paused. For the first time, my presence is no longer required for continuity. He leaned back and closed his eyes. The next morning, he announced his decision. I will step back, he told the group. Not disappear, just move aside. There were protests, quiet ones, respectful ones. You earned rest, Salith said firmly. Elias smiled. Rest isn't the goal, balance is. He moved to a smaller habitat farther from the central systems. He still woke early, still drank his tea, still watched the sunrise. But now, when something needed fixing, someone else handled it. And they handled it well. Stories continued to spread. Children on distant worlds learned about humans who stayed behind. Not heroes in shining armor, just people who refused to abandon responsibility. Humanity became known for something rare. Reliability, not perfection, not dominance. Reliability. One evening, Naira visited him one last time before a long journey. You changed the galaxy, she said. Elias chuckled. I adjusted a few settings, she smiled sadly. You know what I mean? Yes, he said softly. I do. After she left, Elias sat alone beneath the stars. His breathing was steady. His thoughts were calm. He felt no regret. Far away, councils planned long-term stewardship programs modeled after human systems. Wars were avoided not through fear, but through maintenance. Trade routes stabilized. Forgotten places were remembered. And at the quiet center of it all, an old human watched the sky. He did not need statues. He did not need songs. Things were working. That was enough.